Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Atta Galatta. Welcome to Pragya Bhatt's book launch and book reading as well. My name is Lavina Rangel, and I am the Curvy Yogi. For those of you who don't know, we have to mention a little bit of yoga because we can see a lot of yoga people around. And also, as Pragya asked me to mention, the president of the Karnataka Yoga Council. Once that is done and out of the way, welcome to the book launch. Here we are today, actually, very interestingly speaking about a beautiful book, beautiful in every sense, because if you hold this book in your hand, you feel the texture of the book. The book is available on Kindle as well, but when you hold it, there is something that is so beautiful in how it is captured in this tiny little piece of art that captures your senses, right from your fingers, through the way of the art, that's through your eyes, and the texture of the pages, the words. This is something that you must read. But today, before you purchase it to read it, I invite you all to be here with all of us as we listen to it as well, to listen to the words, what they inspire, what they create in us, because creation is what comes in from the womb. And there we are here, in the womb of the goddess. Pragya, congratulations on the unveiling of this book. And before we get forward and get going for this evening, I'd like you to truly unveil it in every sense of the word.
Okay. Well, I guess a lot of you have already seen it. A lot of you who are here today, you've bought the book as well, bought it here to sign. So here's the book.
Here we are. That's our resident photographer, so we have to place the books down only once she gets the camera down. Okay. Thank you, Chanchal. So, Pragya, this book, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And I know you mentioned very quickly, so I won't mention this, but you'll have to tell us a little bit about the artwork, about what is so special about this and the significance of the cover, please.
So I always feel really nice when people actually mention the cover of the book, and that they really find the cover of the book striking, and that's because I feel like this book has been a collaboration between women, and so the cover actually it's designed by my mother-in-law. And if you look at it, you'll see that there's a circle, and around the circle there's a bunch of women, female figures, and it's whirly art. So that's my mother-in-law's specialty, and it's sort of symbolic of how the world is sort of surrounded by women, held by women in a way, and maybe even like the world is in orbit, the earth is in orbit, so maybe that has something to do with the feminine energy as well. So there's a lot of symbolism that has gone into the maybe the crafting or the design of the cover. And so every time someone says, okay, it's a beautiful cover, it's they ask me specifically about the cover, I always feel like, yes, my mother-in-law really she did put a lot of thought into it, and that somewhere we were in sync when we thought about the design of the cover. So that's the significance of the cover. Yeah.
It's not just it's not just the significance, isn't it? I mean, there's so much about motherhood, there's so much about creation, there is so much about what we bring into it, and how we usually think of the mother as the goddess, the mother as Devi, as many of us know, and the words. It's not just the scripture unfolding, it is the universe unfolding when we have an author or a poet who creates out of words. Where do those words come from? Where do they land? Where do they arise? What's the origin of any of those words? And I think that significance is something that we also have some of our authors, friends here with us today who will be reading out some of them, poems that touch them. And let's just hear from Medha Bhaskar. Medha, everyone, is a very good friend, not just mine, but also Pragya's. So she's actually been with Pragya also while the book was being written, yes. And I think that is another sense of collaborative power. You see, we have a lot of women not just around this image that we see, but the creative power of women is what we're actually celebrating here today as well. Medha is also a yoga teacher, practitioner, and founder of one of our very, very famous studios in Bangalore, Amrita Bindu. We also have another founder there. But Medha, would you like to read one of Pragya's poems?
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful that you say that, because when Pragya asked me to read her first draft of the book, it almost felt like an extension of our conversations. Like when I was reading it, I could hear literally her voice reading this out to me, because a lot of our conversations revolve so much around poetry, around philosophy, about what really life is about. And I think that this collection of poetry I was very thrilled to see that was her next book. She'd kept it completely like under wraps.
Really?
None of us knew that was coming. And then she said, well, I'm coming up with a book of poetry. And I was very, very thrilled, because poems happen to be my favorite form of literature. And particularly so because there's so much emotion in it, right? It's the heightened form of language, because there's so much that you need to think about, process, and find out what is the real essence of an experience to be able to put it in, and then convey it in ways that it does justice to that experience. And I think that Pragya has done a fantastic job in a lot of the poems. I found it a little hard to pick one out of this, but then there was one that really, really stood out. And that's called The Price of Peace. So I'd like to read it out to all of you today. The Price of Peace by Pragya Bhatt. There's been an inflation in the price of peace. In my grandmother's heyday, the price of peace was marriage at 13 and 4 children by 20, and diabetes for life. In my mother's heyday, the price of peace was a job turned down for a marriage arranged. Family life for her life. In my time, the price of peace are all my clever excuses. An exam, a job offer in a distant city, all the justifications for rejecting conjugal bliss. But my grandmother, my mother, and I, we're all peaceful cowards. My grandmother sacrificed childhood, my mother's sacrificed talents, and my sacrificed potential. The price of peace is indeed rising.
That is beautiful.
It is. I think she had me at my sacrifice potential. As yoga teachers, I think why I find this poem as one of my favorites is because as yoga teachers, we constantly keep chasing peace. And when you quantify it and put a price on it, which we all do constantly in our lives, I think to find that this prize is the peace is so elusive, right? And it changes not only through our lives, but also through the ages. I think she's captured that very, very beautifully. And I think it's a wonderful poem.
It is. I think, Pragya, you should really be proud of that one, because I think as a book for women, a book that's written by a woman, encapsulating a lot of feminine emotion. I think the many women and the men, because all of us have got women in our lives, know that women often pay a price. We pay a price for being peaceful, for seeking peace, for offering peace, and to also be that sustaining factor for what peace is. And what really struck me in this poem was the generational comparison. To say that we are what our grandmothers were, we are what our children and our daughters will be, and at every level we are still paying a price for it. So thank you so much for that, Pragya. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece, and like Medha said, it touches. It's very, very touching.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, for the second section of this, we'd actually take a move now for a conversation between Pragya and Suma Thakur here. Suma is someone very famous, actually.
Really?
Oh, come on, she is. Let me read her bio. Okay, so I have stopped memorizing bios. I just memorize the people here. But Suma Thakur is a writer and an editor. She holds 2 master's degrees. Clap hands.
My mummy is sitting right there. She'll be very happy.
2 master's degrees in journalism, and was awarded the Commonwealth Press Union Fellowship in 2005. Suma lives in Bangalore with her books, paints and canvases, lamps and drums. Her solitude is shared only with the mango tree next to her window, her stable all-weather companion. In addition to all of this, Suma is also the author of The Inner Light, a book that's published by none other than the Hay House Publishing. And so that really, really makes her famous, right?
Yeah.
So Suma here now in conversation with Pragya while I sit in the middle and listen for a while.
Thank you for such a glorious bio, and thank you, Pragya, for inviting me here. It is such a privilege to be in such good company. I can feel the energy in the room. It is excellent. So thank you. So, I went on my year-end travels in the last week of December, and just before that, Pragya reached out to me and she asked me if I'll do this conversation, and I readily agreed. I said, absolutely. So on the day I was to leave for my 10-day year-end vacation, I got a copy of the book. And I looked at it and I said, oh wow, how light and easy and nice. So I'm going to take it along with me on my vacation, and by the time I'm back in Bangalore, I would have finished the book, and I'll have all my questions ready, and there, easy peasy. Look at this book, light, easy, and so pretty, like you said. But what happened was something totally different. I started reading the book, and with every poem that I read, I realized that it may be short, but it is so dense that the emotions that it left with me stayed with me, not sometimes for hours, but sometimes for days together. And I had to stay with that emotion, and that, I think, is what a good book does, and this book really does that. So thank you for writing this. I do have many questions, but we'll see how many we can do today. So my first set of questions really, has to do with the title of the book, and that's the first thing that struck me about the divine feminine. And we've known each other since 2019, and I know your work. I've been following, your interest in mythology, culture, yoga, and especially the way you lean into the divine feminine. So I want to ask you to tell us a little bit about that. And how it ties to this book specifically, and your idea really to write about the divine feminine in your first book of poetry.
So that's an interesting question, because it asks me many things, So one thing is, yes, I have been looking at the divine feminine, at the feminine, gender in yoga, feminine in yoga, feminism in yoga, and that's been like an ongoing project for the last 2 or 3 years. But when I decided to write, I didn't actually make a decision to write a book of poetry. It was more a decision to compile the poetry that I'd been writing for a few years. And when I went back to look at the kind of poems I have and the kind of work that I've done in the past so many years, I realized that a lot of it was about the divine feminine, was about the women who were having an impact on me. And so it wasn't like a conscious decision to write about a particular topic, but I feel that our art, the things that we create, whether it's art or it's writing, or art in terms of writing or painting or anything else, I think it's always a reflection of what we're thinking, what we're going through. And because in the last few years I have been looking at the feminine, I have been in conversation with a lot of great women, in friendship with a lot of great women and meeting a lot of great women, I think that was just invariably something that would come out in whatever I was writing. So I myself was quite struck by the fact that like a lot of these poems have so many women characters. They talk about a lot of feminist issues. So it was a very sort of organic process. It wasn't something that I set out to do. Yeah.
Okay. So my second question is a follow-up to that, and something that you touched upon in the introduction about, just the wide range of women from different life stages, ages, generations, of course, economic class, social strata, and even physical ability and spiritual awareness. So you've touched on this entire gamut of different women, from different environments. So how did that come about? Because that would entail, I would imagine, a lot of experience, a lot of travel, a lot of observation too. But I want to hear more about, how, was that also, did it happen organically?
Yes, I do believe that that is organic. So even before I decided to look at the divine feminine in yoga, I always tell my friends I'm very much a girl's girl. I am very much someone who has a lot of female friends. Somehow I have more female friends than male friends. Most of my students are female. I have two younger sisters, and growing up it was like four women and my dad. So it's always been like that. Growing up, I've always had more female friends than male friends, and I think just that's just what sort of has helped in life experiences related to women, the impact that women have had on my life, and I think that's just what you see in the poetry. Of course, the other aspect of it, like the divine feminine, specifically when I talk about a journey, there's a few poems about journeys that I've written. A lot of my research is about going to a sacred feminine site and looking at it. That's of course been a very conscious process, a decision. But I think that somewhere is also influenced by my life journey of having so many women and so many strong women in my life. A lot of women, I've looked up to a lot of women, and I think that's just what sort of has contributed to this, and also to my decision to study the divine feminine. Yeah.
So whenever we ask a writer about her favorite, pick your favorite book or pick your favorite poem, and I'm going to ask that of you.
Okay.
To pick your favorite within the divine feminine theme, and would you read for us from it?
Okay.
Or talk about it, whichever.
So I think my favorite would have to be the poem called "In the Womb of the Goddess," and for many reasons. So this poem is it's a very short poem, and in this poem I talk about the masculine, I talk about the feminine. I mean, there are allusions to both of these symbols, and then I talk about a journey to the Kamakhya temple. I don't know how many of you have actually been to the Kamakshi temple in Guwahati. And it's a very famous temple. It's a site of pilgrimage. A lot of people go there with a lot of feeling. A lot of they go there because it's supposed to be a very powerful site of for worship of the divine. And I went there many decades ago, and at that time I wasn't studying the divine feminine. I wasn't even so interested in that sort of philosophy at all. Actually, it was many years ago, more than 10 years ago. And if you go to the temple now, you'll see that there are all these barricades. There's a lot of security. It's well lit. It's been modernized. But when I went, that temple was literally, there was nothing. There were no barricades. You just had to get in line to go into the temple. There were no lines also because not many people really wanted to go in. And the main the sanctum sanctorum of that temple, it was lit by one bulb, somewhere, it's this sort of like an oval, kind of space, and there was just one bulb somewhere, and you could really not see much, so it was one of those temples which was a very different kind of experience for me. And the energy, if anyone has been there, it's very palpable. You can actually feel the energy, and even I could feel the energy, and I wasn't even a believer, so to speak, at that time. And the reason I like this poem is because I have tried to encapsulate what it feels like to go into a womb. Because when you go, this temple, when you go into it, you actually feel like you're sort of floating in some sort of medium, and it's sort of like going into the womb of the goddess, So I've tried to describe that. If we have time, I can read the poem.
It's the title poem, so I think you should read it.
So it is the 11th poem, page 22, for all of you who have the book. In the Womb of the Goddess. Decades ago, on an overcast windy day, I stood on a makeshift ferry on the Brahmaputra, that lone male river valiantly snaking through ancient lands of female rivers and Shakti peaks. It is said if you cross the Brahmaputra once, you cross it another 6 times, my friend told me. Her words battled the furious wind to reach my ears, and from there burrowed into my heart. Later I made my way deep into the womb of the goddess, who bled for 3 days every month, her devotees and their wishes in abeyance, for the ritual readiness of her womb. I floated in the damp, still air, lightly, getting closer and closer to the source. I will cross the river 6 times over to come here and be birthed whole. So basically here, I describe the whole process of going into the womb, of the goddess, and it's actually literally, you do actually feel like you are going deep into the womb. And for me, it was dark. You can't see anything. The steps of that lead into the sanctum sanctorum are very steep. So everyone who's there, you're very carefully, slowly, silently walking into this womb. And when you come out, you actually do feel like, okay, you can sort of breathe again. So that's what I meant by I will come here and be birthed whole again. So you do feel like, you're coming out of the womb and you sort of can breathe. So I've tried to sort of encapsulate what that very powerful experience was, in very succinctly in this short poem. But yeah, this is my favorite poem because it describes a very powerful experience that I had. Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk about the human condition. Another popular theme that ran through many of your poems.
Right.
I saw that some of your poems talk about time. They talk about how fragile memory is. It talks about so many things that we otherwise, we don't pay much attention to in the day to day.
Yeah.
It's only when you sit and reflect that you actually think about these things, how quickly time has passed you by and all of that. So what actually inspired you to touch upon those actually very difficult themes in your poems?
Well, I think the process of creating art is such that you feel things, you feel subtle things, and you try to bring them out. As creators, as artists, it is always you have this penchant for sort of tapping into that which is not so obvious, or you have a tendency to feel things that are subtle, that not everybody feels. And the challenge then is through your art, can you express to people who perhaps are not privy to those emotions or to those experiences, can you express it to them in a way that makes them feel like they also know that, So I think about the human condition, I think compassion would be something that that I am most interested in, because I feel that that is what it means to be human. To have compassion for other living beings, especially your like other human beings. So I think if in my poems, if people feel that I address things that are not so obvious, I think that's just a result of the creative process. I think as artists, and you write, and I feel yoga is a form of art, philosophy. I think we all sort of we're privy to things that perhaps are not talked about too much, perhaps are just palpable, but not, people can't even express them. But we, because we're artists, we have the power or the talent to express things which are not so easily, expressible or said by people. So I think, that's what I touch upon in the poems, and that's what I try to express.
Yeah, it's come out quite beautifully.
Thank you.
What you've intended to do with that. One more question I do have about the human condition is connected to something you said a little earlier about compassion being a value that that inspires you a lot. In that you talk about a lot of contrasts in your poetry,
Yes.
whether it's the contrast of rich and poor. The haves and the have-nots in so many ways, right?
Yes.
Even like monetarily, spiritually, materially, physically, whatever. So tell us a little bit about that, because what I sensed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're flirting with the idea of bringing this theme of oneness and getting us all to think about the fact that we are all one, despite our differences.
Yes.
And we are actually headed there towards all of us being whole and merging
Yes.
into a beautiful
Yeah.
union. So was that what you wanted to do with it, or did I read too much into it?
No, I mean, I think I wasn't very consciously, I didn't set out very consciously to talk about that theme, but I think that is. My life experience actually has been like that. I've lived in different countries. I've had the opportunity to be in different cultures, meet different kinds of people, and I always feel like nationalities change, people change, food habits change, but essentially we're all the same. And what is it that's the same in us? What is that one thing? Why do I say that? Why do I feel comfortable talking to a wide variety of people? Or why do we sometimes travel yet feel at home? Why is that? And that's because essentially we are the same, and that's a lesson that we get in Vedanta as well. And in Vedanta, and I'm sure you guys, I'm in a panel of yoga teachers, so Vedanta is something we're very familiar with. But yes, in Vedanta they say accept your differences, but remember you're one. You're all the same. And I think that is something that I explore in my poetry, because the one thing that you'll see all the characters, so to speak, sort of expressing in my poetry is the human aspect. So it might be like a daughter taking care of resenting, but having to take care of her sick mother, and then reflecting upon how when she was younger, her mom had the authority, but now her mom is old, so she has the authority. So what is the similarity here? It's the fact that the rise and the fall of power of human beings, of situations. But somewhere it's the same. It's like cyclical. We can really understand where we were at one point in time, then we move on. Other people are now so you can really understand the human aspect of it, and that is what sort of pervades the poetry. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite in that theme? A favorite poem that you want to talk about?
Actually, yeah. I think Nitya is going to read that. My favorite poetry poem for that would be In an Ancient Language, which is also which is also what I was thinking of naming the book. I was confused between calling it In an Ancient Language or In the Womb of the Goddess. And maybe once you read, I can just talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for all the reasons that she explained right now, it really, really touched me. Not that the rest didn't. Every single poem here completely touched me. But this is like really special when you realize, that what goes around comes around, and ultimately, we're all in it together. If you can just tune into everything more than language, you'll probably be able to see it. So here goes. In an ancient language. My first Sanskrit teacher was partially blind, and in the expanse of the dusty campus, she kept mostly indoors. On a summer's day, I sat on her cool red oxide floor, leafing lazily through my notes. The bougainvillea danced gently with the wind. When I asked her a question, her eyes flickered toward my voice, her hands readjusting her glasses, instinctively, pointlessly. She took off her glasses and closed her eyes. I see more clearly now, she said. The earnestness in a question, the distracted answer, the houseboy slyly pilfering from my unattended pantry. I can see the monsoon coming in the smell of the earth, and the crescendo of the insects brings in the night. Sometimes languages, even ancient ones, she said, are constrained by more than just grammar. They fail to find emotions camouflaged between the lines.
I think this is where I come back in to tell you who this beautiful woman was who actually just read this poem for us. With us here is Nitya Neelakantan, a learning facilitator, yoga instructor, and literary fiction author. She is a resident of Bangalore and was born and raised here. An avid reader, traveler, and animal lover, Nitya, when not working, spends time with her husband, son, and 2 dogs. She's also the author of Rudraban. So we've got lots of authors over here for you to look up on Amazon and buy the books and find them the next time so you can get them signed. Nitya, tell us a little bit more about what in this.
So personally, I think, One is, of course, the entire theme of the feminine that flows through the entire set of poetry. But apart from that, being a yoga teacher as well, understanding yoga philosophy, and I felt that it deeply reaches into the theme that we're all one, you know. And if we can, if we can cross those barriers of language, caste, creed, ageism, whatever it is, we'll find that we're a lot closer and we're a lot similar in everything that we do.
Yes.
And that really touched me.
Yeah, it's our similarities that actually bind us closer than our differences, is what they usually say. You know, ladies and gentlemen, through this conversation that we've had and what everyone has been speaking about, especially what Pragya brought in, the way Suma actually wove it in, Nitya and Medha also bringing in, I can't help but pay attention to the point that there's a lot of creativity here. We speak about values, we're speaking about compassion, and then there is the sense of motherhood, and then there is the sense of mothering that seems to come out in every bit of conversation that they've had. But at the same time, you see art, and you keep using the word art and creation, but you can't help but notice that this book over here is created from scratch. It's an emotion that has taken form as word. And that emotion, like Medha said earlier, art and poetry is just heightened emotion in words, right? Those heightened emotions that are here, that then when Suma actually nicely wove it in and said that, okay, this is a very philosophical way of looking. This is a spiritual progress. And of course, you know, you've got all yoga teachers here. So this book is not a yoga book, okay? You'll have to take classes with us for that. But, and you can find us, we'll give you classes. But, if you can have a book with you which takes you through a journey, which opens up a spiritual concept to you, wouldn't you be interested? I'll leave you with that while we take a short break, and we'll be back for some more conversation, and you'll hear more from us then. So we have what, 5 minutes?
Yeah, about
Short
5
break?
minutes.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be back in about 5 minutes, just as a short break, and come back and join us in then. Nitya, I know you had another very interesting poem that you highlighted, and if you would like to read that, please, and a little louder.
This one is called the Flimsy Armors. The armors around our souls are flimsy and fragile, easily embossed with chinks and fissures and the haste of a fleeting thought. With this armor, we hope to protect secrets that foster our tender souls, secrets of plans unmade, those harsh secrets of an unfelt look, secrets of lessons unlearned, all the secrets from an unread book. This armor has been with me for so long, meandering through eras endlessly, like destiny, persistent in its ways. But when it fell away, unexpectedly, like the fickle first smile, I started to blossom through my cracks, and the secrets I kept with me after that danced brazenly under my translucent skin. This is fabulous. I think it brings out emotions that most of us feel, you know, especially with the number of things we keep locked up within ourselves, the boundaries that we have, the walls that we put up around ourselves. And you know, the last few lines where Pragya has said that once the wall fell away, you know, unexpectedly, and the secrets I kept with me after that danced brazenly under my translucent skin. That just took my breath away.
Yes. You know, this I think is one of my personal favorites in this book. Just the choice of words. You know, you hear cracks and fissures. You know, cracks and fissures that can be very unsightly sometimes. But those cracks and fissures, when they heal and they leave a scar, and especially when you say translucent skin, when they dance brazenly, those secrets just come out. They just show you how unique you are in all your unique imperfections, your flaws, all of them out there for everyone to see. I can't tell you enough. This book just taps into emotion for me. This is my personal favorite. I'll speak more about that later, but for now, Soma, over to you.
Okay. Continuing our conversation, Pragya, I want to talk about some of the encounters that you've mentioned in your poems. And these seem like very, by the way meetings. You talk to a taxi driver, or you, exchange a word with a neighbor, things like that. So starts off like that, and then the poem opens up a whole world of philosophy, and it goes really deep into that one encounter. For me, this was fascinating. It also opened a window to your mind, because it also showed us how you think about your encounters and what takeaways you take home from those encounters. So tell us a little bit about how these happen, these poems with the encounters. Are these fictitious? Did they actually happen, or you don't want to tell us?
So none of the encounters are fictitious. So some of them I've had directly. It's direct perception, direct experience, and some through my friends. So like I said, I have a lot of female friends, and like I said, that sort of inspires my poetry. So in talking to a lot of my friends, we talk deeply, we talk frequently about so many things that happen to us, and there's so many things that we can sort of relate to. So I think just conversations with my friends and friends, family, those are also sort of, sometimes they spark a thought, or sometimes you can relate other things in your life to that. So no, none of it is actually fictitious. So so one of the poems that Nitya read was about a Sanskrit teacher who's going blind, and who's saying that now that I'm going blind, I feel like I can see better. And that Sanskrit teacher was my first Sanskrit teacher. She was in fact going blind, and this is in 2012, and she was my first Sanskrit teacher at S. Vyasa, where now I've done my master's. And she's her name is Saraswati Mohan, and she's written most of the Sanskrit books that we use as textbooks in the university. And even in 2012, she used to say like 70% blind, completely blind in one eye and going blind in the other eye. So even that is not fictitious. But I think out of the entire batch of us who actually studied Sanskrit under her, I doubt anyone would remember this. But it is something that she was. I saw her as a teacher, as a guru, as someone who was teaching me a subject that I have gone on to learn more. But I had a reverence for her, and I think that's why she's embedded in my mind, and that's how she came. After all these years, she came out in poetry. So even a teacher who is going blind and who can see better now, that's not fiction. That that is something that I've experienced. So yeah, so it's just my direct perception. A lot of what I speak to about with my friends. Yeah. So that's what you see. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. But as a writer, and also as someone who is a deep thinker, and someone who kind of pauses, at important moments in life, do you find that difficult when you meet people and then you end up looking at everyone almost like material, as like material for your next poem or your next book, and it happens to us writers a lot. So where do you then draw the line and say, I'm just gonna be in this moment, enjoy this interaction, and not think of the potential that it could carry?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have my yoga practice to thank for that, to be in the present moment, to be mindful, to accept an experience, and then to move on. I have my practice to thank for that. But also I think my study of Vedanta and of the scriptures, where they say, and it's even something in Buddhism that suffering exists. It is inevitable. So all of that is something, it's part of being human. And there is so much suffering. And while, you cannot, it's not healthy for a human being just to dwell on that suffering. But also it's not healthy for us just to turn a blind eye to that suffering. So I think, my study of Vedanta, study of yoga, I think it really helps me in sort of handling that. I think it's a lot of that. So again, introspection really helps you in dealing with what can be like harsh realities in life.
Yeah. And speaking of encounters, you mentioned, one example with your Sanskrit teacher. Are there other encounters here, or is there a favorite one besides that you want to read from or tell us a little more about?
About my encounters, so there's another poem called "You Remind Me of a Squirrel."
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so I think that's actually a poem that is very close to my heart, because I actually wrote it about the lady who comes and helps me in my house, and it's just that she started working for me, and she's been working for me for a long time. And initially, when I was getting to know her, I used to observe little things about her, and I'm sure she was observing me also, so that we can sort of get along and how we like to work together and stuff like that. But there's this particular instant where there was a Ganesh idol that I had. It was a small statue, and it fell on the floor and it broke. And I told her, okay, now this is broken and I don't know what to do with it. So you can just maybe get rid of it, figure out what to do with it. And she said, no, I'm gonna take it home if you don't mind. And I said, okay, go ahead and take it home. I'm not sure where the other piece fell. I don't know. So she said, it's okay, I'll look for it. And she's like, I just need a little bit of gum and I'll glue it back together and I'll take it home. And I think that just struck me, she just that whole interaction just struck me, that I was sort of carelessly sort of saying, okay, this is something that now you can get rid of, but she was making something out of something that I had sort of discarded, you can even say that in a very superficial manner, I had discarded something that I felt like it's an object and it has broken, so just get rid of it. And she took that object and created something out of it. She took something that I had discarded and created something out of it. So I think that that moment was very. It just made me think. It struck me. It made me think. So You Remind Me of a Squirrel is about that instance. So if we have time, I can read it out.
I think you should. Yeah. Please.
Yeah. Okay. So this one is, and actually this is the first poem in the collection, and it's called "You Remind Me of a Squirrel." The woman who works in my house shuffles from room to room, barefoot and quiet. The edges of her sari frayed, the flowers in her oiled hair fresh, streaks of time and earth on her slightly largish feet. In another time, in another age, her face was as fresh as the flower she wears in her heavily oiled hair. Sometimes she asks me for balm for her aching knees, for clothes I no longer care for a little rice and dal, also a broken Ganesha. She carefully gathered the pieces and took them home. You remind me of a squirrel, I want to tell her, collecting for the winter of your life. Thank you.
I want to ask you a few other questions about your writing life.
Yeah.
The first question, I'm very, very curious about this. There are 59
Yes.
poems. Why not 60, or why not a round figure 50? Why like 59?
So there's a technical reason for that. So I, when I decided to publish a book of poetry, I took an inventory, a stock of all the poems that I'd written the last few years. And so that's how I begin writing. I just look at everything I have, or I put everything down on the page, and then I start the process of elimination. So
with the squirrel in this process.
Yes, so I started the process of elimination, poems that I just did not want, just did not fit. And finally, when I thought I had the perfect manuscript, like it was perfect number, all the poems were perfect, then I remember that nothing is perfect, so you have to look at it again, So in that process, I actually, in the final edit of the book, I reduced I think I deducted 10 poems. I eliminated 10 poems from the anthology.
Even then it was 69. It was not a 70.
Yeah, because I couldn't find that one, I couldn't find that one poem that would make it like 60. So I was okay. I mean, I was aiming to have at least like 100 poems, but I realized that none of the others really, were ready at the moment, at that time when the deadline approached. So I was like, it's okay, one poem less, but it's fine. It's okay.
And tell us a little bit about the titles of the poems. So the title itself, each title reads like a poem in itself. So did you think of the title first and write the poem, or did the title emerge after writing the poem, or
Yeah.
it happened both ways?
So it was a little bit of both. So a lot of you who are on social media, you probably know about the NaPoWriMo and the NaNoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month.
Yeah.
And National Novel Writing Month. So there's an entire month on social media dedicated to writing like 5,000 words or writing a poem a day. So I usually follow along with a lot of the the prompts that different accounts give you different prompts. So the genesis of a lot of the poems was there, but then I'd say that most of the poems I ended up eventually changing the name to suit what I was feeling at the moment I edited the anthology. So it started somewhere, but I think ultimately the name of the poems were whatever I felt when I read it for the final time, whatever I felt was more apt. Yeah.
And one last question.
Yes.
Is there a second poetry book in the offing?
I'd like to think so. Yes, poetry. I've always written poetry. That's what I used to write. Now I pretty much write non-fiction, but I love the medium of poetry simply because it allows you to express so much with such few words. And I think poetry is something that everybody can connect to. Simply because it speaks about emotion. So yes, I would like to say yes. But this book itself took me 2 years to compile. So I'm not sure when, but yes, I would definitely like to write another one. Yeah.
And should we end with your favorite poem, maybe? Or you want to say something else before that, or
Who wants to read Pragya?
Would you like to read one? I think, why don't you read one?
Oh, you want me to read one?
Since you haven't read any, if you're
Since
ready.
I haven't read any. Okay. My favorite one is already read, but I will read this one. And I'm reading this one because when I opened the book, this is what came up.
And incidentally, this is one of my favorites. Yeah.
There you go. A song on our vacant lips. There was once a woman who walked from village to village and town to town with her knotted hair and her skin clear. We called her crazy. She would sing of an invisible love only her heart saw and felt with her strong voice. A love she was the answer to, a love that was understood by her thirsty bones. We branded her crazy, as such people are wont to be, and in our private moments, inside the softness of twilight, we envied that woman, her consummate belief, and wished for ourselves that in our lives we would know a love like that, if only as a song on our vacant lips. Pragya Bhatt, everyone. In the Womb of the Goddess. If you haven't got your book, if you haven't got it signed, you know where to find that, you know where to find the author. This book is an anthology and a compendium of human emotions. I can tell you just by these few poems that have been read here, from all the poems that I've read at home, they touch you. They touch you not just because of what they contain from what Pragya wants to say, but because we see a lot of ourselves in there. We see a lot of ourselves, we see a lot of others, and that gives a voice to who we are. It validates us, it acknowledges us, it sees us. And as we read it, we read ourselves there. Thank you everyone for being here, for making this very special day, all the more special for Pragya and for all of us. Thank you for your time, your attention, your presence. I am Lavina Rangel. It's been a pleasure having all of you around. And if you'd like to interact with Pragya, she's going to be around here. Please get your books and have her sign it. And on behalf of everyone, Suma Tekur here with us. This is Medha Bhaskar, Nitya Neelkantan, myself Lavina, with the lovely Pragya Bhatt. In the Womb of the Goddess, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.